A little girl walks into a cafe and, with a trembling voice, asks a wealthy man to marry her mother. He is shocked, feeling the weight of a request no child should ever have to make. As he investigates, he discovers that mother and daughter are hiding from a cruel abuser and the threat of deportation. If you were touched by this beautiful story of resilience and love, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. Continuing. The morning bustle at Sunrise Cafe in downtown Phoenix was at its peak when 7-year-old Lily Martinez pushed open the heavy glass door. Her small hands clutched a crumpled piece of paper, and determination shone in her dark eyes as she scanned the crowded space. The cafe buzzed with the familiar sounds of clinking cups and business conversations, the air thick with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and pastries. In the corner booth sat Daniel Hawthorne, immersed in financial reports. At 42, he was one of Arizona's most successful real estate developers, known for transforming abandoned properties into thriving community spaces. His tailored suit and commanding presence marked him as someone important, someone with power, exactly the kind of person Lily was looking for. Across the cafe, Elena Martinez wiped down a counter, her tired eyes occasionally darting to check on her daughter, who she thought was coloring at an empty table. When she spotted Lily weaving between tables toward the corner booth, her heart nearly stopped. "Excuse me, sir." Lily's voice trembled slightly as she approached Daniel's table. "I need to ask you something very important." Daniel looked up, momentarily disoriented as he shifted from spreadsheets to the small girl standing before him. "Yes? What can I do for you, young lady?" Lily straightened her shoulders, summoning all her courage. "Will you marry my mom?" The cafe seemed to fall silent around them, though the background noise continued unabated. Daniel's coffee cup paused midway to his lips as he processed the child's question. "Lily!" Elena rushed over, her face flushed with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry, sir. She doesn't know what she's saying." Her accent thickened with nervousness as she tried to pull her daughter away. But Lily stood her ground, unfolding the wrinkled paper in her hands. "I wrote it all down. See? We need someone to marry my mom so we don't have to go away far." The paper revealed childish handwriting with misspelled words, clearly explaining their predicament from a 7-year-old's perspective. Daniel's eyes moved from the child to Elena, whose gaze was now fixed on the floor, her hands trembling slightly. As they rested on her daughter's shoulders, something about her seemed familiar. "You served me coffee last week," he said quietly. "You remembered exactly how I like it, even though I'd only been here once before." Elena nodded, still not meeting his eyes. "I try to remember the regulars." Her voice was barely audible over the cafe noise. "Mom is the best at remembering things," Lily interjected proudly. "She works here and cleans offices at night, and she helps me with homework even when she's super tired." Daniel observed Elena more carefully now. Behind her professional demeanor, he noticed the dark circles under her eyes, the way her uniform hung slightly loose on her frame, and the worn condition of her shoes. There was a dignity in her posture despite her obvious exhaustion. "Please, Lily, that's enough," Elena whispered, mortification evident in her voice. "Mr. Hawthorne doesn't want to hear about our problems." Daniel surprised himself by saying, "Actually, I don't mind." He gestured to the empty seats across from him. "Would you both join me for a moment?" "I can't," Elena replied quickly. "I'm working." "Just for 5 minutes," Daniel insisted gently. "I'd like to hear what Lily has to say." From behind the counter, Marge, the cafe owner, nodded at Elena. "Take a short break, honey. I've got things covered." Reluctantly, Elena slid into the booth, keeping Lily close beside her. The child immediately launched into explanation. "We might have to go away because some bad people want to send us back. But if Mom marries an American, we can stay here forever." Lily's logic was straightforward, her understanding of immigration limited but essentially correct. Elena's face paled. "Lily, please." Daniel's expression remained neutral, but his mind worked quickly. As a businessman, he was used to assessing situations rapidly, identifying problems and solutions. "Is this true?" he asked softly. Elena hesitated before responding. My situation is complicated, but this isn't your concern, Mr. Hawthorne. I apologize for my daughter's behavior. She overhears things, and children have big imaginations. I'm not imagining, Lily protested. Carlos said, Lily, enough. Eleanor's voice carried a warning that made the child fall silent immediately. Daniel noticed how Lily's mention of this Carlos caused Elena's body to tense, her knuckles whitening as she gripped her daughter's hand. I should get back to work, Elena said, sliding out of the booth. Again, I'm very sorry for the interruption. They walked away. Daniel found himself unable to return to his reports. Something about the interaction nagged at him, the fear in Elena's eyes, the desperation in Lily's request. He'd encountered many people in difficult circumstances through his charitable foundation work, but something about this small family struck a deeper chord. Over the next week, Daniel found himself returning to Sunrise Cafe daily, always sitting at the same table. He observed Elena as she worked, her efficiency, her kindness to customers, the way she maintained her dignity despite the occasionally condescending treatment from some patrons. He noticed how she saved the slightly damaged pastries to bring home to Lily, how she counted her tips carefully during breaks, and the way her eyes constantly scanned for her daughter, who often came to the cafe after school. On Friday afternoon, as the cafe emptied between the lunch and dinner crowds, Daniel approached the counter, where Elena was restocking supplies. Elena, I'd like to speak with you privately, if possible. She looked up, wariness evident in her expression. About what, Mr. Hawthorne? About how I might be able to help you and Lily. Elena's defensive posture told him everything. We don't need charity. It's not charity I'm offering, Daniel replied. It's assistance. There's a difference. In my experience, men like you don't offer help without expecting something in return. Her voice was quiet but firm. Daniel considered her words carefully. I understand your skepticism, but I have resources that could improve your situation. Legal help, for starters. Elena's laugh was bitter. Legal help? Do you know how many people have promised that? Immigration lawyers want thousands of dollars I don't have. I have connections with pro bono attorneys who specialize in immigration cases. A flicker of hope crossed Elena's face before disappearing behind caution. Why would you do this? You don't know me. Daniel wasn't entirely sure himself. Perhaps it was Lily's courage that had initially caught his attention, or perhaps it was recognizing something in Elena that reminded him of his own mother's struggles years ago. Because I can, he said simply, and because no one should live in fear. Their conversation was interrupted by the cafe door swinging open. A man entered, his eyes immediately finding Elena. Daniel noticed how she stiffened, her face draining of color. Elena, the man called out in a deceptively friendly tone. I've been looking for you. We need to talk about our arrangement. Carlos, I'm working, Elena replied, her voice steady despite her evident fear. I can't talk now. Carlos's smile didn't reach his eyes as he glanced between Elena and Daniel. New friend? He asked, a threatening undertone to his question. Regular customer, Daniel corrected, instinctively stepping slightly in front of Elena. Daniel Hawthorne. He extended his hand, sizing up the man before him. Carlos ignored the outstretched hand. Family business, he said dismissively. Nothing that concerns you. Daniel maintained his position. Elena just mentioned she's working. Perhaps you could come back later. The tension in the cafe thickened as Carlos stared at Daniel, clearly unused to being challenged. After a moment, he shrugged with exaggerated casualness. Fine. We'll talk tonight, Elena. Don't forget our agreement. With that thinly veiled threat, he turned and left. Once he was gone, Elena released a shaky breath. You shouldn't have done that. Who is he? Daniel asked. Someone who knows my situation and uses it against me. Elena's voice was tight with controlled emotion. I need to pick up Lily from school now. Elena, Daniel called as she untied her apron, my offer still stands, and there are options beyond legal help. I want you to know that. She paused at the door, studying him with a mixture of hope and suspicion. What kind of options? Whatever it takes to keep you and Lily safe." The conviction in his voice surprised even himself. Elena nodded once before pushing through the door, leaving Daniel to wonder what exactly he was getting himself into, and why this small family's predicament had affected him so deeply. As he gathered his papers, Daniel noticed Lily's crumpled note that had somehow been left behind. He carefully smoothed it out, reading the childish scrawl. "Please marry my mom. We need help. She is nice and makes good pancakes. We don't want to go away. Thank you." Daniel carefully folded the note and placed it in his wallet, his decision already forming in his mind. Elena Martinez hurried along the cracked sidewalk, her mind replaying the confrontation at the cafe. The late afternoon sun beat down on Phoenix's streets, the October heat still formidable despite autumn's arrival. She checked her watch. 15 minutes to reach Lily's after-school program before they started charging extra fees she couldn't afford. "Mama!" Lily called out as Elena approached the playground. The little girl abandoned her half-finished drawing and ran across the yard, her backpack bouncing wildly behind her. Elena swept her daughter into a tight embrace, breathing in her familiar scent of crayons and apple juice. "How was school today, mi vida?" "Good. I got a gold star for my math test, and Miss Jenkins says I'm the best reader in class." Lily's pride was evident. As she pulled the test from her backpack, the perfect score circled in red. "That's wonderful, baby." Elena's smile was genuine despite her exhaustion. Lily's education was everything, the entire reason Elena had risked so much to come to America 6 years ago, pregnant and desperate for a better life than the poverty and violence they'd faced. In her hometown. As they walked home, Eleanor's thoughts drifted to Daniel Hawthorne. His offer of help seemed too good to be true. In her experience, wealthy men didn't extend assistance without expecting something in return. Yet there had been something in his eyes, a sincerity that made her want to believe him. "Is the rich man going to help us, Mama?" Lily's question cut through Elena's thoughts. Elena sighed. "Lily, you shouldn't have talked to him like that. It's not appropriate to ask strangers such personal questions." "But he's not a stranger. He comes to the cafe all the time, and Marge says he owns half of Phoenix." "That's an exaggeration," Elena replied, though she knew Daniel's reputation as a successful developer. "And regardless, our problems are our own to solve." They approached their apartment building in a working-class neighborhood on the city's south side. The 2-story complex had seen better days with peeling paint and a constantly malfunctioning air conditioning system, but it was home, at least for now. As they climbed the exterior stairs to their second-floor unit, Elena felt the familiar knot of dread form in her stomach. Carlos's car was parked in the lot below. "Go to Mrs. Gonzalez next door for a bit, okay?" Elena handed Lily her backpack. "Tell her I need to talk to Carlos alone." "I don't like him," Lily whispered. "I know, Mija. Just for a little while." After ensuring Lily was safely with their elderly neighbor, Elena entered her apartment to find Carlos lounging on her worn sofa, beer in hand, as if he owned the place. "Took you long enough," he said, his eyes cold despite his smile. "Who was the suit at the cafe?" "Just a customer." Elena remained standing, keeping the small dining table between them. Carlos laughed. "Must be a good tipper to have you looking at him like that." "I wasn't looking at him in any way." Elena kept her voice steady. "What do you want, Carlos? I paid you last week." Carlos set down his beer, his expression hardening. "Immigration's been doing more raids. The price just went up." Elena felt her stomach drop. "I can't give you more. I'm barely making rent as it is." "That's not my problem, Elena." Carlos stood, moving toward her with practiced intimidation. "You want me to keep quiet about your status, you pay what I ask. Simple business." Carlos had entered her life 3 years ago, when Eleanor was desperate for fake documents to secure better work. As an employee at a document processing office, he'd provided them for a price. What started as a one-time transaction evolved into ongoing extortion when he discovered she was undocumented. Now he demanded regular payments to keep her secret. "I need more time," Elena said, trying to keep the desperation from her voice. Carlos moved closer, backing her against the wall. "You know, there are other ways you could pay me." His hand reached up to touch her face. Elena jerked away. Never. I'd rather be deported. Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. And what about Lily? You want her growing up in foster care while they process your deportation? Because that's what happens to kids when their mothers get picked up by ICE. The threat to Lily made Elena's blood run cold. How much? She asked, defeated. Another 300, by Friday. Carlos smirked, knowing he'd won. And, Elena, that? Rich guy. Stay away from him. You're my investment and I don't share. After Carlos left, Elena sank to the floor, allowing herself 5 minutes of tears before collecting Lily from the neighbor's apartment. She had $87 in her emergency fund and another $60 in tips from this week. Not enough, never enough. That night, after tucking Lily into the pull-out sofa that served as her bed in their one-bedroom apartment, Eleanor sat at the kitchen table counting coins from her tip jar. The sound of a car backfiring in the parking lot made her jump, her nerves frayed from constant anxiety. She thought again of Daniel Hawthorne's offer. Could she trust him? Men like him lived in a different world, one where problems could be solved with a phone call or a signature on a check. They couldn't understand the precarious existence of people like her, where one wrong move could destroy everything. Elena had come to America at 23, fleeing an abusive relationship and economic hopelessness. She'd crossed the border while 6 months pregnant, guided by coyotes paid with money, borrowed from family members who'd scraped together their life savings to help her. The journey had been treacherous, but the promise of a better life for her unborn child had given her courage. For the first few years, she'd worked under-the-table jobs, housekeeping in motels, dishwashing, anything that paid cash. When Lily started school, Elena needed more stable employment, which led her to Carlos and his counterfeit documents. Now, she was trapped in his web of extortion, unable to escape without risking everything. A knock at the door startled her. From her thoughts, Elena froze. Carlos sometimes returned when drunk, becoming more aggressive with his demands. She approached cautiously, peering through the peephole. Daniel Hawthorne stood in the dimly lit hallway, looking distinctly out of place in his expensive suit. Elena opened the door a crack, keeping the security chain fastened. "How did you find where I live?" I asked Marge at the cafe, Daniel admitted. "I apologize for the intrusion, but after what happened today, I was concerned." "You shouldn't be here." Elena glanced nervously down the hall. "I know who Carlos is," Daniel said quietly. "He's been investigated multiple times for immigration fraud and extortion. He targets vulnerable immigrants, offering documentation services, then blackmails them afterward." Elena's silence confirmed his suspicions. "Let me help you, Elena." Daniel's voice was gentle but firm. "Not out of pity, but because what he's doing is wrong and you and Lily deserve better. Why do you care?" Elena's question held genuine confusion. "You don't know us." Daniel hesitated before answering. "My mother was an immigrant from Ireland. She came here legally, but faced discrimination and exploitation. She cleaned houses for families who treated her as invisible. One man helped her, when no one else would, gave her a job with dignity, helped her get education. Because of him, she built a good life for us. I promised her I'd pay that forward someday." The sincerity in his voice made Eleanor waver. She unlatched the chain and opened the door wider. "Come in, but please be quiet. Lily's sleeping." Daniel entered the small apartment, taking in the modest but immaculately clean space. Family photos lined the walls, and Lily's artwork was proudly displayed on the refrigerator. Despite the apartment's limitations, Elena had created a loving home. "I spoke with a friend at the FBI today," Daniel said once they were seated at the kitchen table. "Carlos Mendez is under investigation for running an extensive documentation fraud operation. They're building a case against him, but they need victims willing to testify." Elena shook her head immediately. "I can't. He knows where we live, where Lily goes to school, and if I come forward, I'll be deported." "Not necessarily. There are protections for witnesses, especially those who help bring down operations like this. You could qualify for a U visa." "A what?" It's a visa for victims of crimes who assist law enforcement. It would give you legal status and a path to permanent residency. Hope flickered briefly in Elena's eyes before reality extinguished it. Even if that's true, the process would take years. Carlos wants more money by Friday, or he'll report me to ICE. Daniel leaned forward. What if there was another way to get you legal status more quickly? There isn't. I've researched every possibility. Marriage to a US citizen, Daniel said simply. Elena stared at him. You can't be serious. I am. It would be a marriage on paper only. To protect you. And Lily, while we deal with Carlos and process your proper documentation. That's illegal, Elena protested. Marriage fraud, we could both go to prison. It's only fraud if the sole purpose is immigration benefits. If there's another legitimate reason, like protection from an extortionist, the legal waters become murkier. Eleanor stood, pacing the small kitchen. This is crazy. You're a successful businessman. Why would you risk your reputation, possibly your freedom, for us? Daniel's expression grew thoughtful. Sometimes we reach points in life where we realize success means nothing if we're not using it to make a difference. Meeting you and Lily, it woke something in me. I've built buildings, made money, but what have I really done that matters? So, we're your good deed. Elena's voice carried a hint of bitterness. No, Daniel replied firmly. You're two people in an impossible situation who deserve better. I have the means to help. It's as simple as that. Eleanor studied him, searching for deception or ulterior motives but finding none. Still, years of hard lessons made trust nearly impossible. What would you want in return? She finally asked, the question hanging heavily between them. Nothing. Daniel held her gaze steadily. This would be on your terms completely. You'd maintain your independence, your own place if you want. No expectations beyond making it look legitimate for immigration purposes. Elena glanced toward the sofa, where Lily slept peacefully, unaware of the weight pressing down on her mother's shoulders. In her 7 years, Lily had already experienced more instability and fear than any child should. Elena had promised her daughter a better life, and so far she'd barely managed to keep them afloat. I need time to think, she finally said. Daniel nodded, standing to leave. So, of course, he placed a business card on the table. All my numbers are here. Call me any time, day or night, if you decide, or if Carlos comes back. At the door, he paused. Elena, whatever you decide, please be careful. Men like Carlos become dangerous when they feel their control slipping. After Daniel left, Elena sat in the dark apartment, his business card clutched in her hand, weighing impossible choices and wondering if she dared to hope for something better than mere survival. 2. Days passed with Elena turning Daniel's proposition over in her mind. She'd researched marriage-based immigration online at the public library, reading countless stories of couples scrutinized by authorities, their private lives dissected for evidence of fraud. The penalties were severe. Deportation for her, possible. Criminal charges for both of them. The risk seemed too great. Yet as Friday approached, so did Carlos's deadline. Elena had managed to scrape together only $210 of the $300 he demanded, working extra shifts that left her exhausted and still coming up short. You look tired, Mama, Lily observed on Thursday morning as Elena braided her hair for school. Dark circles shadowed Elena's eyes, evidence of another sleepless night. I'm fine, Mija, just working hard. Elena secured Lily's braid with a colorful elastic. Mrs. Gonzalez will pick you up after school today. I have an extra shift at the cafe. Will the rich man be there again? Lily asked innocently. Elena hesitated. Daniel hadn't returned to Sunrise Cafe since their conversation at her apartment. I don't know, Bebe. I hope so. He's nice. He helped me with my spelling when you were busy with customers. This was news to Elena. When was this? Last week, I was doing homework at the corner table and he asked if I needed help. He knows really big words. Lily smiled proudly. He said I'm very smart for my age. The idea of Daniel interacting with Lily unsupervised should have alarmed Elena, but strangely it didn't. Unlike Carlos, whose presence made her instinctively position herself between him and her daughter, Daniel had never triggered her protective instincts. After dropping Lily at school, Eleanor arrived at the cafe to find Marge in distress. The Ehide industrial dishwasher had flooded the kitchen, and the morning rush was beginning. "Elena, thank goodness," Marge exclaimed. "I've got the plumber coming, but we need to serve customers with what we've got. Can you handle the front while I deal with this mess?" By mid-morning, Eleanor was juggling a packed cafe alone, rushing between tables with coffee refills and pastries. When Daniel walked in, she barely had time to notice him before being called to another table. He took his usual corner spot, opening his laptop without trying to catch her attention. Finally, during a brief lull, Eleanor approached his table. "Coffee?" she asked, maintaining her professional demeanor despite the turmoil his proposition had caused her. "Please." Daniel closed his laptop. "How are you, Elena?" "Managing." She poured his coffee, aware of his steady gaze. "I've been thinking about your offer, and it's too risky for both of us." She set down the coffee pot. "I appreciate your willingness to help, but I can't accept." Daniel nodded, not seeming surprised. "I understand. Have you found another solution for your situation with Carlos?" Elena's silence was answer enough. "His deadline is tomorrow, isn't it?" Daniel asked quietly. Elena glanced around to ensure no customers needed her. "I need to get back to work." "Of course." Daniel opened his laptop again. "I'll be here a while if you want to talk later." The morning rush eventually subsided, and Marge returned to the front after dealing with the plumber. She noticed Eleanor's distracted glances toward Daniel's table. "He's been asking about you," Marge commented. "Seems concerned." "It's complicated," Elena replied. Marge's weathered face softened. "Life usually is, honey. But that man's got a good reputation in this city, builds affordable housing, donates to domestic violence shelters, gives scholarships to kids from rough neighborhoods. Not your typical rich developer." "I didn't know that," Elena admitted. "Well, now you do." Marge patted her arm. "Take your break. I've got things covered here." Elena approached Daniel's table hesitantly. "Can I join you for a moment?" He gestured to the seat across from him. "Please." Elena sat, folding her hands on the table. "If, and this is just hypothetically, if I were to consider your proposal, I would need certain conditions." Daniel closed his laptop, giving her his full attention. "I'm listening." "First, I keep my jobs. I support myself and Lily. I don't want your money." "Agreed, though I'd like to help with Lily's education if you'd allow it. A college fund, perhaps." Elena continued. "Second, no romantic expectations. No physical demands." Her cheeks flushed slightly at having to articulate this. "Absolutely not," Daniel replied firmly. "This would be a business arrangement, not a relationship. You'd have complete autonomy. Third, we'd need separate living arrangements. I won't live in your house." Daniel frowned. "That might be problematic for immigration purposes. They look for evidence that couples live together. Then we'd need to create that evidence without actually living together," Eleanor insisted. "We could maintain your apartment, but you'd need to spend some time at my place, have personal belongings there. Immigration officials sometimes conduct surprise home visits." Elena hadn't considered this. "How often?" "It varies, but they're thorough. They check closets, bathroom cabinets, even look at family photos." This complication made Elena hesitate. The thought of pretending to share a life with a man she barely knew was daunting. "We'd need a convincing story of how we met and fell in love," Daniel continued. "Usually couples have months or years of history together before marriage." "We have the cafe," Elena suggested. "It's where we actually met. We could say it developed from there." Daniel nodded. "That could work. Whirlwind romance, perhaps. We'd need to learn a lot about each other quickly." The enormity of the deception they were contemplating settled over Elena. "This is crazy," she muttered. "It is," Daniel agreed. "But sometimes crazy is the only option left." The cafe door opened, and Elena froze as Carlos walked in, his eyes immediately finding her at Daniel's table. His expression darkened as he approached. Well, isn't this cozy, he said, standing over them. Discussing my money, perhaps. Elena stood quickly. I'm working, Carlos. I told you I'd have it tomorrow. Looks more like you're making new arrangements. Carlos's gaze shifted to Daniel. You should know she's damaged goods, amigo, illegal, with a kid in tow. Daniel rose slowly, his 6-foot frame towering over Carlos. I think you should leave. Or what? You'll call the police? Carlos smirked. Go ahead. Let's see who they take away, me or the illegal immigrant. Marge appeared beside them, her normally friendly face stern. Is there a problem here? No problem, Carlos replied smoothly, just reminding Elena of our appointment tomorrow. He leaned closer to Elena, whispering, 300, cash. Or ICE gets an anonymous tip about an undocumented worker at Sunrise. Cafe. After he left, Elena sank back into her chair, trembling slightly. I don't have enough, she whispered. I've tried everything. Daniel reached across the table, stopping just short of touching her hand. Let me help you. Not just with Carlos, but with everything. You deserve a chance to live without this constant fear. Tears threatened, but Elena blinked them back. She'd spent years being strong, never allowing herself the luxury of breaking down. And if it doesn't work? If they discover it's not real? Then I'll face the consequences alongside you. Daniel's voice was steady with conviction. But I believe we can make this work. Elena looked out the window, watching as Carlos's car pulled away from the curb. The sense of being trapped, of having no good options, had been her constant companion for years. Perhaps it was time to take a risk on something, someone different. If we do this, she said slowly, I need one more condition. Name it. If at any point I feel uncomfortable or that you've broken your word, I walk away. No questions, no arguments. Daniel nodded solemnly. You have my word. This is your choice, Elena. All of it. That evening, after putting Lily to bed, Elena called the number on Daniel's business card. He answered on the second ring. I'll do it, she said without preamble, but we do this my way. Of course, Daniel replied. When? Tomorrow. Before Carlos comes for his money. Elena's voice was firm, her decision made. No ceremony, no rings, no pretense, just the legal document. I'll arrange everything. There was a pause before he added, Eleanor, are you sure about this? No, she answered honestly, but I'm out of alternatives. The next morning, Elena dressed in her best outfit, a simple navy dress she'd found at a thrift store, and explained to Lily that they were going to the courthouse for important papers. She'd decided not to tell her daughter about the marriage yet, wanting to protect her from both disappointment and false hope. Daniel met them outside the courthouse, looking more casual than Elena had ever seen him in jeans and a button-down shirt. He greeted Lily warmly before turning to Elena. Are you ready? He asked quietly. Elena nodded, though ready was hardly the word for the tumult of emotions she felt. This was not how she had imagined marriage would be, a business-like transaction with a virtual stranger, motivated by desperation rather than love. The civil ceremony was brief and impersonal. The courthouse clerk barely looked up as she processed their paperwork, and the justice of the peace recited the vows mechanically. No flowers, no music, no family or friends, just Lily watching wide-eyed as her mother said, I do to a man she'd known for less than 2 weeks. Is that it? Lily asked afterward, seeming disappointed by the anticlimax. You're married now? Yes, Elena replied, showing her the marriage certificate. Mr. Hawthorne is going to help us with some legal issues. So you're my dad now? Lily asked Daniel. Directly, her question catching both adults off guard. Daniel knelt to Lily's level. I'm your mother's husband, he explained carefully. But that doesn't automatically make me your dad. That's a different kind of relationship that takes time to build. Lily considered this. But you'll live with us and take care of us like dads do? Elena intervened. It's complicated, Mija. We'll explain more later. As they left the courthouse, Carlos was waiting by the parking lot, leaning against his car with a smug expression. Elena instinctively pulled Lily closer. Right on time, Carlos called out. Got my money? Daniel stepped forward, positioning himself between Carlos and Elena. "There won't be any more payments." Carlos laughed. "That's not how this works." "It is now." Daniel handed him an envelope. "This isn't money, it's a copy of our marriage certificate dated today. Elena is now married to a U.S. citizen, which changes her immigration status significantly." Carlos opened the envelope, his face darkening as he scanned the document. "This is bullshit. You think a piece of paper protects her?" "It does, actually, and so do these." Daniel produced another envelope. "Statements from 3 other women you've extorted, all willing to testify. My attorney filed them with the FBI this morning, along with financial records tracking your payments. Agent Wilson says to tell you hello." The color drained from Carlos's face. "You're bluffing." "Try me." Daniel's voice was steel beneath silk. "Walk away now. If you contact Elena or come near Lily again, those statements go public, and the investigation becomes a prosecution." For a moment, Carlos seemed ready to lunge at Daniel. Then, with a muttered curse, he got into his car and sped away. Elena stood frozen, processing what had just happened. "Those other women, are they real?" "Yes. The FBI has been building a case against him for months. They just needed more victims willing to come forward." Daniel turned to her. "You don't have to testify if you don't want to. The marriage gives you protection either way." Thank you." The words felt inadequate for what he'd done. As they walked to Daniel's car, Lily skipping ahead, Elena felt something she hadn't experienced in years, the lightening of a burden. So constant she'd forgotten what it was like to exist without it. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," Daniel replied, "we start building a life that will convince immigration our marriage is real. And that begins with figuring out our living situation." The practical reality of their arrangement came rushing back. They were legally married, but everything else about their relationship remained undefined. A blank page waiting to be written with a story neither of them had planned. Daniel's home was nothing like Elena had imagined. Instead of the ostentatious mansion she'd expected from a wealthy real estate developer, his residence was a tastefully renovated historic bungalow in Phoenix's Encanto district. The Spanish colonial revival style, with its red tile roof and arched doorways, reminded Elena of the architecture from her childhood. "It's beautiful," she admitted, as Daniel showed them around. The house was spacious but not excessive. 4 bedrooms, a study, and an open kitchen that overlooked a backyard with mature citrus trees. "It was built in 1930, Daniel explained. "I restored it myself when I first started in real estate. It was practically falling down when I bought it." Lily ran excitedly from room to room, her eyes wide. "Is this all yours?" she asked. Daniel in amazement. "It's ours now," he replied, catching Elena's eye to gauge her reaction to his inclusive language. Elena maintained her composure, though the reality of their situation was still sinking in. She was now legally Mrs. Hawthorne, standing in a home she was supposed to pretend was hers, with a husband she barely knew. "I've prepared the guest suite for you and Lily," Daniel continued, leading them down a hallway. "It has its own bathroom and sitting area. I thought you'd be more comfortable with your own space." The suite was lovely, a large bedroom with an adjoining smaller room that would be perfect for Lily, decorated in soothing blues and creams. Fresh flowers sat on the dresser, and Elena noticed children's books arranged on a shelf, clearly purchased for Lily. "Thank you," Elena said, genuinely touched by his thoughtfulness. "This is very considerate. I want you both to be comfortable." "Here," Daniel replied. "This arrangement is unusual enough without adding unnecessary stress." Lily had already claimed the smaller room, arranging her few stuffed animals on the bed. "Can I put my pictures up?" she asked, pulling school artwork from her backpack. "Of course," Daniel smiled. "This is your home now. You can decorate however you like." The word home hung in the air between them. Elena had lived in 8 different apartments since coming to America, none of which had ever felt permanent or secure. The idea of stability was almost more overwhelming than the marriage itself. "I'll let you get settled," Daniel said, sensing her emotional fatigue. "I've cleared space in the closets and dressers. Dinner will be ready around 6, nothing fancy, just pasta." Join me if you'd like, but no pressure. After he left, Elena sat on the edge of the bed, taking deep breaths. The mattress was more comfortable than any she'd slept on in years. The windows overlooked a garden with a small fountain, the sound of trickling water oddly soothing. "Mama, can we stay here forever?" Lily asked, climbing onto the bed beside her. "I don't know, Mija," Elena answered honestly. "This is temporary to help with our papers. Mr. Hawthorne is being very kind, but this isn't really our home." "But you're married now," Lily persisted. "When people get married, they live together forever." Elena stroked her daughter's hair, unsure how to explain the complexity of their situation. "Sometimes marriages are different. Mr. Hawthorne and I have an agreement to help each other, but it's not like the marriages you see in movies." "You don't love him?" Lily's question was direct, as children's questions often are. "I respect him," Elena answered carefully. "He's a good person who's helping us, but love takes time to grow." This seemed to satisfy Lily for the moment, though. Elena suspected there would be more questions as their arrangement progressed. They joined Daniel for dinner. The conversation stilted at first. Lily, however, soon filled the silence with stories about school and questions about the house. By dessert, a simple vanilla ice cream that Lily proclaimed the best ever, some of the awkwardness had dissipated. After putting Lily to bed, Elena found Daniel in his study, reviewing documents. He looked up when she knocked on the open door. "Is everything okay? Do you need anything?" Elena entered the room, taking in the wall of bookshelves and the large desk covered with blueprints. "I wanted to talk about our arrangement, the practical details." Daniel gestured to a chair. "Of course. I'll need to give notice at my apartment," Elena began, "and I should probably keep working at the cafe. It would look suspicious if I suddenly quit." "Agreed, though perhaps you could reduce your hours." "The overnight cleaning job is taking a toll on you." Elena tensed. "I told you I don't want your money." "It's not about money," Daniel countered. "It's about creating a believable marriage. If we were really in love, wouldn't I want to support my wife so she could spend more time with her daughter? Or pursue education?" The mention of education caught Elena's attention. "What do you mean?" "I noticed the community college catalogs in your apartment," Daniel said. "Were you considering classes?" Elena hadn't realized he'd observed so much during his brief visit. "I was looking into teaching programs. Before coming to America, I studied education for 2 years. I always wanted to be a teacher." "That's perfect," Daniel said, leaning forward with genuine interest. "Immigration officials love seeing evidence of shared future plans. Your education could be something we're building toward together." The idea was tempting. Elena had abandoned her teaching dreams years ago, focusing solely on survival. "The timing of classes would conflict with my jobs," she pointed out. "Which is why cutting back makes sense. You could keep the cafe job for appearances, but drop the cleaning work. I can cover the difference." "That feels like taking advantage." Daniel leaned back in his chair. "Elena, if this were a real marriage, wouldn't we combine resources for the overall good of our family? Your education benefits all of us. It creates a better future for Lily and strengthens our case for immigration." Put that way, it made sense. Still, accepting help went against years of fierce independence. "Think of it as an investment," Daniel suggested. "Once you're certified as a teacher, you'll have your own career and income. This is temporary support toward permanent independence." Elena nodded slowly. "I'll consider it." "Good. Now, about our backgrounds. We should learn about each other. Immigration will expect us to know personal details." Over the next hour, they exchanged basic information: birthdays, favorite foods, allergies, childhood stories. Daniel was born in Chicago but moved to Phoenix after college. His parents were deceased, father from heart disease, mother from cancer 5 years ago. No siblings. He'd been engaged once in his early 30s, but it hadn't worked out. Elena shared selective details about her life in Mexico, her journey to America, and Lily's father, a boyfriend who'd become abusive during her pregnancy and whom she'd fled to protect herself and her unborn child. "You've been through a lot," Daniel observed when she finished. Everyone has their struggles, Elena replied with a shrug. I've been luckier than many. That's not luck, Elena. That's strength. His sincere admiration made her uncomfortable. She wasn't used to being seen, really seen, by anyone. The next few weeks established a cautious rhythm to their unusual household. Elena continued working at the cafe but gave notice at her cleaning job. Daniel helped her enroll in 2 education courses at the community college, scheduling them during hours when Lily was at school. They developed small routines that might appear conjugal to outside observers: morning coffee together before work, occasional family dinners, Sunday brunches where Daniel would make his specialty pancakes for Lily. Elena maintained careful boundaries, keeping her emotional distance while building the necessary facade for immigration purposes. Daniel respected her space, never pressuring for more than she was willing to give. He seemed content with their arrangement, though Elena occasionally caught him watching her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. Lily, however, adapted to their new situation with a child's flexibility. She blossomed in the stability of Daniel's home, delighting in having her own room, a backyard to play in, and a regular bedtime routine. To Eleanor's surprise, she and Daniel developed a natural rapport, bonding over books and his patient help with her homework. One evening, a month into their arrangement, Elena returned from class to find Daniel and Lily in the kitchen, covered in flour and laughing as they attempted to make empanadas following a recipe Elena had mentioned from her childhood. "Mama!" Lily exclaimed when she entered. "We're making surprise dinner. Daniel's doing it all wrong, but I'm helping." "I see that," Elena replied, unable to suppress a smile at the disaster zone her usually immaculate kitchen had become. "In my defense," Daniel said, wiping flour from his face, "your daughter is a very demanding supervisor. She insists we follow your recipe exactly, but neither of us is quite sure what a little bit of this, or until it feels right, actually means." Elena set down her books and joined them at the counter. "Here, let me show you." She took the dough, demonstrating how to roll and fill it properly. Daniel stood close beside her, watching intently, and for a moment the scene felt so domestic, so normal, that Elena forgot the artificial nature of their relationship. Later, after Lily was asleep, Daniel found Elena on the back patio, enjoying the cool evening air. He handed her a glass of wine and sat in the adjacent chair. "Thank you for rescuing dinner," he said. "The empanadas were delicious." "They were a disaster," Elena laughed, "but a tasty disaster. Lily says they're just like your mother used to make." Elena's smile faded slightly. "She never met my mother. She died when I was pregnant with Lily." "I'm sorry," Daniel said softly. "Do you miss Mexico?" Elena considered the question. "I miss certain things, family gatherings, traditional holidays, the smells and sounds of my hometown, but I don't miss the limitations, the feeling that Lily and I would never have opportunities there." "What was your favorite place in your hometown?" "There was a small library with a courtyard garden," Elena replied, the memory vivid despite the years. "I would sit there for hours as a teenager, reading and dreaming of other places. It was the only spot where I felt peaceful." Daniel listened attentively as she described the flowering vines that covered the walls, the stone bench beneath a jacaranda tree, the quality of light in late afternoon. "That sounds beautiful," he said when she finished. "Perhaps someday you can show it to Lily, and me if you'd allow it." The suggestion startled Elena. "You'd want to visit Mexico?" "Why not? It's part of who you are, part of Lily's heritage. If we're going to maintain this marriage, we should embrace each other's backgrounds, shouldn't we?" Elena studied him, trying to understand his motivations. "Daniel, why are you really doing all this? And please don't say it's because of your mother or paying forward kindness. There must be more." Daniel was quiet for a long moment. "Do you remember that day at the cafe when Carlos confronted you?" Elena nodded. "I saw something in your eyes, not just fear, but resignation. Like you'd accepted that life would always be a struggle, that happiness wasn't even worth hoping for." He took a sip of his wine before continuing. "It bothered me deeply, not just because of your situation, but because I recognized that look. I've seen it in the mirror." "You?" Elena was skeptical. "You have everything." Material success, yes, but my life has been empty. I build homes for others while living alone. I accumulate wealth with no one to share it with. After my mother died, I realized I'd focused so much on achieving that I'd forgotten to actually live. He set down his glass. When Lily approached me that day, asking me to marry her mother, it was so absurd, so unexpected, that it cut through all my carefully constructed walls. And when I saw you, really saw you, I felt something wake up inside me. A purpose beyond just making money or expanding my business. So were your midlife crisis? Eleanor couldn't help asking, though there was no malice in her tone. Daniel laughed. Maybe. Or maybe you're my wake-up call. Either way, helping you and Lily feels right. In a way few things have lately. His honesty was disarming. For the first time, Elena considered that perhaps Daniel needed this arrangement as much as she did, albeit for different reasons. Well, she said finally, for what it's worth, you make very good pancakes. Lily says they're even better than mine, which is both insulting and impressive. Daniel grinned. High praise indeed, though I notice you're changing the subject. Yes, Elena admitted. Emotional conversations make me uncomfortable. Noted, Daniel replied, respecting her boundary. In that case, shall we discuss something practical? The immigration office called today. They've scheduled our first interview for next month. Elena's stomach tightened with anxiety. So soon. It's actually good news. They're processing cases more quickly now. But we should be prepared. They'll want evidence of our relationship, proof that we're living as husband and wife. What kind of evidence? Joint accounts, shared bills, photos together, knowledge of each other's daily habits and preferences. Daniel looked at her steadily. We've made a good start, but we need to be convincing. Are you ready for that? Elena thought about the alternative, returning to a life of constant fear, watching over her shoulder, struggling to provide Lily with basic necessities. Then she thought about her daughter's laughter in the kitchen earlier, the way she'd begun to thrive in this stable environment. Yes, she said with newfound determination, I'm ready. Tell me what we need to do to make this work. As they sat, together planning their strategy for the upcoming interview, Elena realized that somewhere along the way, her wariness of Daniel had been replaced by something unexpected: trust. It was a small shift, but significant. For the first time in years, she wasn't facing her challenges alone. The Phoenix Immigration Office was a nondescript government building with fluorescent lighting and uncomfortable plastic chairs. Elena sat rigidly beside Daniel in the waiting area, her hand clutching his in a white-knuckled grip that belied her outwardly calm demeanor. They had arrived 45 minutes early for their appointment, time that now stretched endlessly as they waited to be called. Try to relax, Daniel murmured, his thumb gently stroking the back of her hand. We've prepared for this. Indeed, they had. Over the past month, they'd created a detailed backstory of their relationship, memorized personal information about each other, established joint financial accounts, and taken dozens of photographs together, carefully staged snapshots of family outings, dinners, and everyday moments, designed to create the illusion of a loving marriage. What if they ask something we didn't prepare for? Eleanor whispered. What if they separate us for questioning? Then we tell the truth about how we feel about each other now, even if our beginning was unconventional, Daniel replied. This had become their mantra: stick as close to the truth as possible, changing only the timeline and motivation for their marriage. A door opened, and a stern-faced woman in a navy suit appeared. Hawthorne? Elena and Daniel Hawthorne? They rose together, Daniel's hand supportively at the small of Elena's back as they followed the woman into a small interview room. The officer introduced herself as Ms. Winters, her clipped tone and piercing gaze making it clear she'd conducted countless such interviews and was skilled at detecting deception. Please, sit, she gestured to the chairs facing her desk. This initial interview is to establish the basic facts of your marriage and begin assessing its validity. She shuffled through their file. You were married 3 months ago, correct? Yes, Daniel answered. May 12th. That's quite recent. Ms. Winters looked up sharply. How long had you known each other before the marriage? Elena took a deep breath. We met last January at the cafe where I work. Daniel became a regular customer. 6 months from meeting to marriage is rather quick, isn't it? The officer's tone was neutral but probing. When you know, Daniel replied with a small smile, reaching for Elena's hand. I'd been coming to that cafe for years, but I never really noticed Elena until one day when her daughter approached me. They had decided to incorporate Lily's actual approach into their story, as it was too unique to fabricate, and might be mentioned by others who knew them. Her daughter approached you? Ms. Winters raised an eyebrow. Daniel chuckled, the sound warm and natural. She's quite precocious. She noticed I was alone and decided I needed someone in my life. It was embarrassing for Elena at the time, but it broke the ice between us. Miss Winters made notes without comment. Mrs. Hawthorne, you have a daughter from a previous relationship. Yes, Lily, she's 7. And her father? Not in the picture, Elena replied, sticking to their agreed-upon simplified version of the truth. He was abusive. I left him before Lily was born. I see. The officer turned to Daniel. And you're comfortable raising another man's child? Lily is a wonderful little girl, Daniel answered without hesitation, genuine affection in his voice. I'm honored to be part of her life. The questioning continued, growing increasingly personal. They were asked about living arrangements, daily routines, future plans. Ms. Winters seemed particularly interested in their financial situation. Mrs. Hawthorne, you continue to work at the cafe despite your husband's considerable wealth. Why is that? Elena had anticipated this question. Independence is important to me. I want to contribute to our household and set an example for my daughter about work ethic. And I'm also taking education courses to become a teacher. Mr. Hawthorne supports this? Completely, Daniel affirmed. Elena is brilliant with children. She'll make an exceptional teacher. Ms. Winters made more notes before abruptly shifting tactics. Tell me about your first date. They smoothly recounted the story they'd rehearsed. Dinner at a small Mexican restaurant near the cafe, where they'd talked for hours about their lives and dreams. It was fabricated but plausible, with enough specific details to sound authentic. And when did you first become intimate? The officer's question was delivered clinically, her eyes watching for signs of discomfort. Elena felt her cheeks warm despite her preparation. After our third date, she answered, following their script. We had dinner at Daniel's house. He cooked? Badly, Daniel added with a self-deprecating laugh. I nearly burned the kitchen down trying to impress her. The personal questions continued for another 30 minutes, covering everything from family backgrounds to sleeping habits. Finally, Ms. Winters set down her pen. I'll now need to conduct separate interviews. Mrs. Hawthorne, please wait outside. While I speak with your husband. Elena's heart raced as she left the room. This was the part they'd feared most, individual questioning where inconsistencies might be exposed. She sat in the waiting area, mentally reviewing their prepared answers and fighting the urge to flee. Inside the interview room, Ms. Winters adopted a more confrontational tone with Daniel. Mr. Hawthorne, your wife's immigration status was problematic before your marriage. Were you aware of this? Daniel maintained eye contact. Yes, Elena was transparent about her situation. And it didn't concern you that marrying her would conveniently resolve these issues. Of course I considered it, Daniel replied carefully, but it wasn't the reason for our marriage. I fell in love with Elena and Lily. Their immigration status was something we needed to address, but it wasn't the foundation of our relationship. Ms. Winters leaned forward. Mr. Hawthorne, we've received information suggesting your marriage may be fraudulent. Can you explain why someone might make such an allegation? Daniel's expression remained calm, though internally he cursed Carlos's predictable vindictiveness. Elena's ex-boyfriend has been harassing her for years. When he discovered our relationship, he threatened to cause problems for her. I assume he's the source of these allegations. So you believe this is a false claim made out of jealousy? I know it is, Daniel stated firmly. Our marriage is genuine, even if it happened quickly. After 20 more minutes of probing questions, Ms. Winters called Elena back in and repeated the separate interview process with her, looking for discrepancies in their accounts. Eleanor maintained her composure, though her anxiety was evident in her tightly clasped hands. When they were finally reunited in the interview room, Ms. Winters reviewed her notes silently before addressing them both. "Your stories align on the essential points, but given the allegations we've received and the timing of your marriage, we'll need to conduct a more thorough investigation." She looked up from her papers. "This will include a home visit, additional interviews with friends and family, and a review of your daily communications. We'll be in touch to schedule the home visit within the next 2 weeks." As they left the immigration office, Elena remained silent until they reached Daniel's car. "They don't believe us," she said flatly, once they were inside. "They're doing their job," Daniel replied, though his expression was troubled. "The separate questioning is standard procedure. We did well, Eleanor. But they mentioned allegations. That has to be Carlos." Daniel nodded. "Almost certainly, but we anticipated this. Remember, we have nothing to hide." "Accept the truth," Eleanor said quietly. "The truth is complex," Daniel countered, starting the car. "Yes, our marriage began as an arrangement, but our life together is real. The way I care about you and Lily is real." Elena looked out the window, processing Ms. Winters' announcement about the home visit. "We need to make the house look more lived in by me. My things are still mostly in the guest suite." "We'll take care of it this weekend," Daniel assured her. "Move your clothes into my closet. Arrange your toiletries in the master bathroom. It's all part of the plan." That weekend became an intensive effort to create the appearance of a shared life. Elena moved her limited wardrobe into Daniel's spacious closet, where her modest clothes looked out of place beside his tailored suits. They arranged family photos throughout the house, including several of their wedding that had been staged after the fact with the help of a photographer friend. Of Daniel's Lily, believing they were simply reorganizing, happily participated by placing her toys and books around the house. "Now it looks like we really live here," she observed innocently, unaware of the irony in her statement. On Sunday evening, after Lily was asleep, Daniel found Elena in the master bedroom, staring at her toothbrush now positioned beside his in the ensuite bathroom. "This feels strange," she admitted when she noticed him watching her, creating evidence of a life we don't actually share. Daniel leaned against the doorframe. "Would it be easier if we did share it?" Elena turned to face him. "What do you mean?" "Maybe you should actually sleep in here, use the master bedroom. I could take the guest suite." "The investigators might notice your things in the other room," Elena pointed out. "Not if I move everything. My clothes, personal items, all of it. Make this truly your space." Elena considered the offer. "That seems extreme. This is your home, your bedroom." "It's our home now, at least officially." Daniel stepped into the room. "Elena, I meant what I said at the interview. I care about you and Lily. Your comfort matters to me. If maintaining separate spaces makes you feel safer, then that's what we'll do." His sincerity touched her. Over the past months, Daniel had consistently demonstrated respect for her boundaries, never pressuring for more than she was willing to give. It was a novel experience after years of men who took without asking. "Thank you," she said softly. "But that won't be necessary. The guest suite connects to this room. If there's a surprise visit, you could quickly move through the bathroom. It would appear we share the master while maintaining our privacy." Daniel nodded, relieved by her practical solution. "Good thinking. We should prepare Lily as well. The investigators might ask her questions." "What should we tell her?" Eleanor worried about involving her daughter in their deception. "The truth, as much as is appropriate," Daniel suggested. "That some officials might visit to ask about our family, and it's important to be honest about how we live together and care for each other." Without explaining the immigration implications, Elena agreed. "Exactly. Lily doesn't need to understand the legal complexities, just that these visitors are checking that we're a real family." Eleanor smiled sadly. "In some ways we are becoming one, aren't we? Though strange, unconventional family, but still Daniel didn't answer immediately, his expression thoughtful. I think families come in all forms. What matters is how we care for each other. The conversation was interrupted by the ringing of Elena's phone. She frowned at the unfamiliar number before answering. Hello? Elena Martinez, a woman's voice asked. Yes, this is Elena Hawthorne, she corrected automatically, still unused to her married name. This is Ms. Winters from USCIS. I'm calling to inform you that we'll be conducting a home visit tomorrow morning at 7:30 a.m. Elena's heart raced. Tomorrow. But you said within 2 weeks. Surprise visits are standard procedure in cases with fraud allegations, Ms. Winters replied coolly. Will that be a problem? No, no problem, Elena assured her, trying to keep her voice steady. We'll be here. After hanging up, she turned to Daniel, her face pale. They're coming tomorrow morning. They're trying to catch us unprepared. Daniel remained calm. Then we'll be prepared. We've done everything necessary. The house is ready, our stories are consistent, and most importantly, Lily is comfortable with both of us. That's not something we can fake. They spent the next hour making final adjustments to the house, ensuring it reflected a shared life. Eleanor's college textbooks on the coffee table, her favorite tea in the kitchen cabinet, family photos prominently displayed. By midnight, they'd done all they could to create the illusion of a normal marriage. As Elena prepared to return to the guest suite for the night, Daniel touched her arm gently. Try to get some sleep. Whatever happens tomorrow, we'll face it together. His steady presence calmed her somewhat, but sleep proved elusive. Elena lay awake most of the night, mentally rehearsing answers to potential questions and worrying about what would happen if they failed to convince the investigators. Deportation would mean returning to a place where opportunities for Lily would be limited, where the cycle of poverty would be nearly impossible to break. The thought was unbearable. At dawn, Elena rose and prepared breakfast, needing activity to channel her nervous energy. By the time Daniel and Lily joined her in the kitchen, she had made a full spread: eggs, bacon, fresh fruit, and the pancakes that had become Daniel's weekend specialty. Wow, Mama, Lily exclaimed. Is it someone's birthday? No, sweetie, Elena replied, forcing a smile. We're having visitors this morning. Remember how we talked about some people coming to ask questions about our family? Lily nodded solemnly. The government people. Daniel said they're just doing their job and we should be nice even if they ask funny questions. That's right, Daniel confirmed, exchanging a glance with Elena over Lily's head. Just be yourself and tell the truth about our home. At precisely 7:30 a.m., the doorbell rang. Eleanor took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and went to answer it with Daniel beside her, his hand supportively at the small of her back. Together, they opened the door to face whatever scrutiny awaited them, their forced smiles masking the fear that this carefully constructed life they'd built might crumble under investigation. Ms. Winters stood on the doorstep, accompanied by a male colleague who carried a tablet and camera. Good morning, Mr. and Mrs. Hawthorne, she said briskly. We're here to conduct our home assessment. May we come in? As Eleanor stepped back to allow them entry, she felt Daniel's hand find hers, their fingers intertwining in a gesture that was no longer just for show. Whatever happened next, they would face it as a united front, a family forged not from conventional love, but from mutual respect, shared purpose, and the unexpected bonds that had formed in the shadow of necessity. The home inspection was even more thorough than Elena had anticipated. Ms. Winters and her colleague, who introduced himself as Mr. Parker, moved methodically through the house, opening drawers, examining closets, and taking photographs of rooms and personal items. They paid particular attention to the master bedroom, noting the arrangement of toiletries in the bathroom and the distribution of clothes in the closet. Your husband has significantly more clothing than you do, Mrs. Hawthorne, Ms. Winters observed, her tone neutral but her implication clear. Daniel's work requires a professional wardrobe, Elena explained. I'm more practical. I've never been interested in accumulating things. Ms. Winters made a note without comment and continued her inspection, pausing to examine family photos displayed on the dresser. "These are recent," she remarked, lifting a framed photo of the three of them at a local park. "Yes," Daniel acknowledged. "We've been making an effort to document our family activities. Elena pointed out that I didn't take enough photos before." In the kitchen, Mr. Parker opened the refrigerator and pantry, noting the types of food stocked. "I see a mix of American staples and Mexican ingredients," he commented. "Elena is teaching me to cook dishes from her childhood," Daniel explained. "Last week we made chiles rellenos. It was a disaster, but educational." Elena smiled despite her nervousness. He set off the smoke alarm, twice. This small, genuine moment of shared humor seemed to register with Mr. Parker, who nodded and made notes on his tablet. Lily, who had been instructed to play in her room during the inspection, eventually wandered into the living room where the adults were examining bookshelves. She approached Ms. Winters without hesitation. "Are you the government lady who's checking if we're a real family?" she asked directly. Ms. Winters seemed taken aback by the child's forthrightness. "I'm here to learn about your family." "Yes." Lily nodded seriously. "Daniel says you're just doing your job. Do you want to see my room? I have pictures of all of us on my wall." Before the officer could respond, Lily had taken her hand and was leading her down the hallway. Elena moved to follow, but Mr. Parker stopped her with a question about her. Education materials spread across the dining table, effectively separating them. In Lily's room, Ms. Winters found herself being given an enthusiastic tour by the 7-year-old. "This is my special shelf that Daniel built for me," Lily explained, pointing to a colorful bookcase. "And these are my school awards. Daniel puts them in frames because he says achievements should be celebrated." Ms. Winters examined the framed certificates and drawings, noting the pride with which the child displayed them. "You call him Daniel, not Dad?" she asked casually. Lily considered this. "He said I could call him whatever makes me comfortable. Sometimes I say Dad when I'm talking to my friends at school because it's easier. He doesn't mind either way." "And how do you feel about living here? Do you miss your old home?" "Our old apartment was small and the air conditioning always broke. Here I have my own room and a yard with a lemon tree." Lily pointed to her window, which overlooked the garden. "And Daniel helps me with math homework. He's really smart." "What about your mom? Is she happy here?" Lily's expression became more thoughtful. "She smiles more now and she doesn't cry at night when she thinks I'm asleep." This simple observation, delivered with a child's honest perception, seemed to affect Ms. Winters. Her professional detachment slipped momentarily as she glanced at the family photos Lily had taped to her wall, candid shots capturing genuine moments of connection between the three of them. Meanwhile, in the living room, Mr. Parker was questioning Daniel about his work schedule and how he balanced family responsibilities. "I've restructured my business to work primarily from home," Daniel explained. "I converted the pool house into an office so I can be present for Lily after school." "That's a significant adjustment for someone in your position," Mr. Parker noted. Daniel nodded. "Priorities change. My company runs smoothly without me micromanaging. Every detail. Family comes first now. And this shift happened suddenly after your marriage." "It was already in progress," Daniel answered carefully. "Meeting Elena and Lily accelerated changes I'd been considering for some time." The questioning continued throughout the morning. Elena was asked to prepare lunch, which the officers observed but declined to join. They noted how comfortably the family moved around each other in the kitchen, the easy way Lily helped set the table, and the natural interaction between Eleanor and Daniel as they worked together. As the inspection neared its conclusion, Ms. Winters and Mr. Parker conferred quietly in the entryway before delivering their parting instructions. "We'll need to schedule one final interview at our office next week," Ms. Winters informed them. "After that, we'll make our determination regarding Mrs. Hawthorne's permanent residency application." After they left, Elena collapsed onto the sofa, emotionally exhausted. "Do you think they believed us?" Daniel sat beside her, equally drained. "I think we did everything we could. Lily was amazing, completely natural and honest." "Too honest, maybe," Elena worried. "Who knows what she might have said when I wasn't there?" "Whatever she said would have been the truth as she sees it," Daniel replied. And that's our strongest evidence that in Lily's eyes we've become a real family. The week until their final interview passed in a blur of anxiety and preparation. They reviewed potential questions, ensured their stories aligned, and tried to maintain normal routines despite the stress. Eleanor continued her classes and cafe shifts, while Daniel worked from his home office, their day-to-day life settling into a rhythm that felt increasingly natural. On the morning of the final interview, they dressed carefully. Eleanor in a simple, blue dress she'd purchased for the occasion, Daniel in a suit that was professional but not ostentatious. Lily was left with Marge from the cafe, who had become a trusted friend and supporter of their family. The immigration office seemed even more intimidating than before. This time, they were shown into a larger conference room where Ms. Winters awaited them along with Mr. Parker and a third officer they hadn't met before. "Mr. and Mrs. Hawthorne, thank you for coming," Ms. Winters began formally. "This is our final evaluation interview before we make our determination. We have some additional questions based on our investigation." What followed was the most intensive questioning yet. They were asked about future plans, how they would handle potential conflicts, their views on raising Lily. The questions probed not just facts but feelings, the emotional foundation of their relationship. "Mrs. Hawthorne," the new officer addressed Elena directly. "In your own words, why did you marry Daniel?" Elena felt Daniel tense slightly beside her. This was the central question, the one they'd prepared for extensively. She could recite their practiced answer about falling in love quickly, about Daniel's kindness and stability appealing to her. Instead, she found herself speaking from the heart. "When I first met Daniel, I saw him as a solution to my problems," she admitted, surprising even herself with her candor. "I was desperate, afraid of losing everything I'd worked for, of Lily. Losing her home and education, marriage seemed like a path to security." The officers exchanged glances, clearly not expecting this level of honesty. "But what I've discovered since then," Elena continued, "is that Daniel isn't just a solution. He's a partner. He respects my independence, supports my education, and treats Lily with such genuine care that it sometimes brings me to tears. He's teaching me that accepting help doesn't mean surrendering my strength." She looked at Daniel, whose expression reflected surprise and something deeper. "I didn't marry for love, I married for protection. But every day I'm discovering what it means to be truly seen and valued by someone. If that's not the beginning of love, I don't know what is." The room fell silent as her words hung in the air. Even Ms. Winters seemed momentarily at a loss for how to respond to such raw honesty. Finally, the third officer turned to Daniel. "And you, Mr. Hawthorne, what are your feelings toward your wife?" Daniel took a deep breath. "When Elena and Lily came into my life, I was successful by most measures, but fundamentally alone. I had wealth, status, recognition, everything except connection. What began as a desire to help has become something I never expected." He reached for Elena's hand. "Elena challenges me daily. She refuses to be impressed by my accomplishments or wealth. She sees the man beneath the success and holds him accountable. She's teaching me about resilience, about finding joy in simple moments, about building a life that matters beyond balance sheets and business deals." Daniel's voice grew, stronger, more certain. "I don't know if what we have fits traditional definitions of marriage. We are still learning each other, still building trust. But I know that my life is immeasurably better with Elena and Lily in it, and my commitment to them is absolute." Ms. Winters studied them both for a long moment. "Your honesty is unusual in these proceedings. Most couples try to convince us of a perfect love story." "Perfect isn't real," Elena replied simply. "We're not perfect. We're just trying our best every day." The officers conferred quietly before Ms. Winters addressed them again. "We have one final question, and I want you both to consider it carefully. If Mrs. Hawthorne were granted permanent residency today, independent of this marriage, would you remain together?" The question cut to the heart of their arrangement. It was the ultimate test of whether their marriage was solely for immigration purposes or had developed into something genuine. Elena and Daniel looked at each other, the moment of truth between them. This wasn't something they had rehearsed or even discussed privately. Whatever answer came now would be real. "Yes," Daniel said without hesitation, "but I would want Elena to choose freely, without obligation or pressure. If she decided to leave, I would respect that decision while hoping she might consider a future where we could build something authentic together." Elena felt tears threatening. His answer had stripped away pretense, acknowledging the unusual foundation of their relationship while offering something few men in her experience ever had, the gift of true choice. "I would stay," Elena said softly. "Not out of gratitude or obligation, but because Daniel has shown me what partnership can be. We didn't begin in the traditional way, but we've created something worth continuing. I would choose to see where this journey leads." Ms. Winters nodded, making a final note in their file. "Thank you for your candor. We'll review all the evidence and testimonies we've gathered and make our determination. You'll be notified by mail within 30 days. As they left the immigration office, neither Eleanor nor Daniel spoke immediately. The emotional weight of their declarations hung between them, transforming their carefully constructed narrative into something raw and real. In the car, Daniel finally broke the silence. "Did you mean what you said in there about staying?" Eleanor looked out the window, watching Phoenix pass by in a blur of desert colors. "Yes," she admitted. "I surprised myself, but yes. What about you?" Every word. Daniel's hands tightened. On the steering wheel. "Eleanor, I know our arrangement had clear boundaries and I've tried to respect them, but my feelings have changed. I care about you and Lily in a way I didn't anticipate." "I know," Eleanor said quietly. "I've seen it. In 1,000 small ways every day. Where does that leave us?" Elena considered the question carefully. In an honest place, not the fairy tale romance that immigration might prefer, but something real, something with potential. Daniel nodded, accepting this measured response. "I can work with potential." When they arrived home, Lily ran to greet them, eager to know if the government people were finished asking questions. "Yes, Mija," Elena assured her, lifting her daughter into a hug. "They're finished. Now we just have to wait for their decision. But we'll be okay, right? We can stay together." Lily's question held the innocent concern of a child who had finally found stability and feared losing it. Elena and Daniel exchanged a look over Lily's head, a moment of perfect understanding passing between them. "Yes, Lily," Daniel answered, including himself in her embrace. "No matter what happens with the paperwork, we'll be okay. That's what families do. They find a way to stay together." The certainty in his voice was a promise, one that transcended their legal arrangement and spoke to the deeper bond that had formed between them. As Elena met his gaze, she felt something unfamiliar but unmistakable unfurling within her heart. Not the desperate gratitude of a woman saved from disaster, but the quiet recognition of a woman finding her equal, her partner, perhaps even her amasidoind. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived from USCIS. Elena's hands trembled as she opened it, Daniel and Lily beside her at the kitchen table. She read the first paragraph silently, her expression unreadable. "What does it say, Mama?" Lily asked anxiously. Elena looked up, her eyes meeting Daniel's. "They've approved my permanent residency. The investigation is closed." Daniel's face broke into a relieved smile. "That's wonderful news." "And," Elena continued, her voice catching, "slightly, they've noted that our marriage demonstrates genuine familial bonds despite its unconventional beginning. They believe us, Daniel. They see us as real." The validation from an unexpected source, government officials trained to detect fraud, struck them both with surprising force. Their performance of family had been recognized as authentic, perhaps because somewhere along the way, the line between performance and reality had blurred beyond recognition. That night, after Lily was asleep, Eleanor found Daniel in his study, working late as usual. She stood in the doorway watching him for a moment before speaking. "I've been thinking," she said quietly, "about what happens next." Daniel set down his pen, giving her his full attention. What would you like to happen? Next. Elena entered the room, perching on the edge of his desk rather than taking the chair across from him. Our arrangement has served its purpose. I have my residency now. Legally, we could move forward with separate lives. Daniel's expression remained carefully neutral, though a shadow passed behind his eyes. Is that what you want? No, Elena replied simply. But I need something. From you first. Anything. Time. Elena met his gaze directly. Time to discover who I am when I'm not running, not afraid, not dependent on anyone for survival. I need to find my own strength before I can truly choose a life with someone. Else, understanding dawned in Daniel's expression. You want space. I want to finish my education, establish my career, learn who Elena Hawthorne is when she's standing on her own 2 feet. She reached for his hand, not because I don't care for you, but because I need to know that whatever grows between us comes from choice, not necessity. Daniel turned her hand over in his, tracing her palm gently. I understand. What are you proposing? I'd like to find a small place for Lily and me, close by so Lily can maintain her school and her relationship with you. We'll remain legally married but live separately while I complete my education. And after that, Elena smiled softly. After that, we see where we stand, with clear eyes and open hearts. Daniel brought her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her palm. I've waited my whole life to find what matters. I can wait a little longer for you to find your path. In that moment, something shifted between them, the business arrangement, transforming into a promise, a commitment to discover what might bloom if given space and time to grow naturally. It wasn't a conventional love story, but then again, neither of them had ever fit conventional molds. Thank you, Elena whispered, leaning forward to place a gentle kiss on his forehead, their first genuine physical expression of affection. For everything. As she turned to leave, Daniel called after her. Elena, no matter what happens between us, Lily will always have a place in my life. I hope you know that. Elena nodded, her heart full with the knowledge that whatever path their relationship took, her daughter had found something precious, a man who saw her value and would stand by her without conditions or expectations. She knows, Elena assured. Him. We both do. 6 months passed in a new rhythm. Elena and Lily moved into a modest 2-bedroom apartment just 10 minutes from Daniel's house. It was small but bright, with large windows overlooking a community garden where Lily delighted in helping tend vegetables on weekends. Elena had insisted on paying her own rent, though she'd compromised by allowing Daniel to establish a college fund for Lily. The separation was both harder and easier than expected. Harder because they'd grown accustomed to the daily patterns of shared life, morning coffee, evening check-ins, the simple comfort of another adult's presence. Easier because the distance provided clarity, allowing their relationship to evolve without the complicating factors of dependence and obligation. Daniel remained a constant in their lives, taking Lily to school 3 days a week, hosting Saturday, brunches at his house and never missing her school performances. He and Eleanor developed a comfortable co-parenting arrangement that puzzled outsiders but worked perfectly for them. They were legally married but functionally independent, connected by Lily, and a growing friendship that deepened with each passing week. Eleanor flourished in her independence. She completed her education courses with distinction, secured a student teaching position at a local elementary school, and began building professional connections that would help her transition to full-time teaching. Her confidence grew as she navigated life's challenges on her own terms, no longer defined by crisis or survival. You seem different, Marge commented one afternoon when Elena stopped by the cafe for coffee. Lighter somehow. Elena smiled, understanding exactly what her friend meant. I feel different. For the first time, I'm making choices because I want to, not because I have to. And Daniel? How's that complicated arrangement of yours working out? It's evolving, Elena admitted. We talk almost daily. He helps with Lily. We have dinner together at least once a week. Sounds like dating to me, Marge observed with raised eyebrows. Maybe it is, Elena replied thoughtfully. But on our own terms, in our own time. What she didn't share was how these dinners had slowly transformed from family affairs with Lily to occasional evenings, just for the two of them, with conversation that stretched late into the night. How Daniel had begun bringing her small, thoughtful gifts, a book by her favorite author, a plant for her windowsill, a framed photo of Lily that he'd captured in a moment of pure joy. How their goodbye embraces lingered a little longer each time, neither quite ready to let go. As spring arrived in Phoenix, Eleanor completed her teaching certification. Daniel attended the small ceremony, cheering as loudly as if she'd won an Olympic medal. Afterward, he presented her with a delicate silver bracelet engraved, with the date, a commemoration of her achievement, not their relationship. "I'm proud of you," he told her, his eyes conveying far more than his simple words. "You did this on your own terms, Elena. Exactly as you should have." That night, after, Lily was asleep. Elena sat on her small balcony, turning the bracelet over in her hands and contemplating the journey that had brought her to this moment. 6 years of struggle and fear had been followed by an unexpected arrangement that had given her safety, then independence, and finally the space to discover her own strength. And Daniel. Daniel had become something she'd never expected. Not a savior or a solution, but a partner who respected her need for autonomy while remaining steadfastly present. Their unusual path had allowed them to build a foundation of friendship and respect before anything else, a reversal of the conventional relationship progression that now seemed wiser than she'd initially realized. The next morning, Elena made a decision. After dropping Lily at school, she drove to Sunrise Cafe, the place where everything had begun. It was Daniel's regular morning to work there, a habit he'd maintained even after their lives had separated. He looked up in surprise when she slid into the seat across from him, coffee cup in hand. "Eleanor, is everything all right? Is Lily—" "Everything's fine," she assured him quickly. "I just wanted to talk to you. Here, where it all started." Daniel closed his laptop, giving her his full attention. "What's on your mind?" Eleanor took a deep breath. "I brought you something." She placed a manila envelope on the table between them. Curiosity flickered across his face as he opened it, then confusion as he examined the contents. "Divorce papers?" Elena nodded. "I had my lawyer draw them up yesterday." Pain flashed in. Daniel's eyes quickly masked. "I see, you've completed your certification, established your independence, the next logical step." "That's not why I'm here." Daniel looked up, meeting her gaze questioningly. "I want to end our arrangement," Elena explained, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Our marriage of convenience has served its purpose. It's time to let it go." "I understand," Daniel said quietly, though his expression suggested otherwise. "You deserve to move forward, find someone you can build a real relationship with." Elena reached across the table, placing her hand over his. "Daniel, I'm not here to end us. I'm here to begin something new." Confusion gave way to cautious hope in his eyes. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to divorce you so that I can date you properly, so that we can build something real based on choice and desire rather than necessity and gratitude." Daniel stared at her, processing her words. "You want to divorce me so we can start over?" "Exactly," Eleanor smiled, feeling lighter with each word. "I want to go to dinner with you and not talk about Lily's school or immigration paperwork. I want to learn who you are beyond the man who helped us when we needed it most. I want to discover if what's growing between us can flourish when it's not complicated by legal obligations. And if it does," Daniel asked, his voice low and intent, "then maybe someday we'll stand before a justice of the peace again. Not because we have to, but because we choose to. With flowers this time, and rings, and vows we write ourselves." Daniel's face transformed with a slow smile that reached his eyes. "You've thought this through." "I've had 6 months to think," Elena replied. 6 months to stand on my own and realize that I don't need you in my life, but I want you in it. There's a world of difference between those two things. Daniel reached across the table, taking both her hands in his. I've waited for you to come to this realization in your own time. I would have waited forever, if necessary. No, Elena said softly. That's part of why I'm here. You gave me time and space without pressure or expectation. You respected my journey even when it took me away from you. Daniel glanced at the divorce papers, then back at her with a hint of mischief in his eyes. So, you want to divorce me so you can date me, with the possibility of marrying me again in the future? It sounds ridiculous when you put it that way, Elena laughed. Not ridiculous, Daniel corrected. Beautifully, perfectly us. We've never done anything the conventional way. Why start now? He signed the papers without hesitation, then slid them back into the envelope. So, Elena Martinez, he said, deliberately using her maiden name, would you do me the honor of having dinner with me tomorrow night? A proper first date. I'd like that very much, she replied, feeling a flutter of anticipation that had nothing to do with gratitude or obligation and everything to do with genuine desire. Should we tell Lily about the divorce? Daniel asked, his concern for her daughter evident even in this moment. I think we tell her that we're starting a new chapter, Eleanor suggested, that sometimes adults need to take steps backward before moving forward, that you'll still be in her life exactly as before, and perhaps more eventually, Daniel added hopefully. Perhaps, Eleanor agreed with a smile that held promise. The divorce proceedings were straightforward and amicable, completed within months. Throughout the process, their relationship deepened in ways that surprised them both. Without the pressure of maintaining appearances for immigration, they were free to discover each other authentically, building connection through choice rather than necessity. Their first kiss came on a warm summer evening, after a concert in the park where they'd spread a blanket on the grass and talked for hours under the stars. It was tentative at first, then growing in certainty, not the culmination of their journey but the beginning of a new one. By the time the divorce was finalized in fall, they were spending most evenings together, their lives re-intertwining by choice rather than circumstance. Lily thrived in the certainty of their mutual affection, secure in the knowledge that Daniel remained a constant in her life regardless of legal definitions. On a crisp December morning, 1 year after Elena had obtained her permanent residency, Daniel suggested a family outing to the botanical gardens. Lily ran ahead on the paths, exclaiming over desert blooms and butterflies, while Elena and Daniel walked hand in hand behind her. Do you remember the conditions you set when we first married? Daniel asked as they paused beside a flowering cactus garden. Of course, Elena replied. No romance, no physical expectations, maintaining my independence. You were so fierce, so determined to protect yourself and Lily. Daniel squeezed her hand. I admired that even then. I was scared, Eleanor admitted. Scared of depending on someone who might disappoint us, scared of losing myself in gratitude. And now? Daniel turned to face her fully. Now I'm not scared anymore. Eleanor met his gaze steadily. I know who I am. I know what I want. And I know that loving someone doesn't mean surrendering my strength. Daniel's expression softened. I was hoping you'd say something like that. He called to Lily, who came running back along the path. To Elena's surprise, the child was grinning widely, clearly in on whatever was happening. Ready? Daniel asked her. Lily nodded excitedly and reached into her small backpack, pulling out a tiny velvet box that she handed to Daniel with ceremonial solemnity. Elena, Daniel began, taking the box but remaining standing rather than dropping to one knee. We've done everything backward. Marriage before dating, divorce before proposal. I thought we might continue our unconventional journey. He opened the box to reveal not an engagement ring, but a delicate silver key. This is the key to our home. Not my home where you once lived as a guest, but a new place for all three of us, if you want it. A home we can create together, as equals, as partners who choose each other freely. Elena took the key, emotions welling up as she understood the perfect symbolism of his gesture. Not a proposal of marriage, they'd already done that for practical reasons, but an invitation to build a life together. The house is in both our names, Daniel continued. I've already signed the papers. Your name is first on the deed." "You bought a house without telling me?" Elena asked, momentarily stunned. "I bought a house to offer you, with no obligation to accept," Daniel clarified. "It's near your school. Has a garden for Lily and space for all of us to grow, but if you don't like it, we'll find another. The point isn't the specific house, Elena. It's that whatever we build together, as equals." Lily bounced impatiently beside them. "Say yes, Mama. I've seen it already, and my room has a window seat for reading." Elena laughed through tears that had begun to fall. "You took Lily to see it." "Of course," Daniel replied. "We're a package deal, you and she, always have been." Elena closed her fingers around the key, feeling its weight, not as a burden but as a promise. "When can we see it?" "Now," Daniel smiled. "If you want to." The house was perfect. A Spanish-style home with a red-tiled roof reminiscent of both Daniel's bungalow and the architecture of Elena's childhood. It had a spacious kitchen that opened onto a patio, a master suite with dual closets of equal size, and a study where Elena could prepare lessons. Lily's room indeed had a window seat overlooking a courtyard garden with a small fountain that immediately reminded Elena of the library courtyard from her hometown. "It reminds me of your favorite place in Mexico," Daniel said softly as they stood in the courtyard. "You described it once, months ago. I wanted to give you a piece of that piece you remembered." Elena turned to him, overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness of the gesture. This man had listened, truly listened to her stories and created something beautiful from them. "I love it," she whispered. "All of it." "Does that mean yes?" Daniel asked, his expression betraying rare vulnerability. "Will you build a home with me, Elena? Not because you need to, but because you want to." Elena looked from Daniel to Lily, who watched them with hopeful eyes and felt the full circle of their journey, from desperation to security to independence, and finally to this moment of free choice. "Yes," she said simply, "because I choose you, because we choose each other." 3 months later they moved into their new home. No rushed courthouse ceremony preceded it this time, no desperate arrangements or conditional agreements. Instead, they spent an evening with close friends who helped unpack boxes and arrange furniture, celebrating not a wedding, but a homecoming. After everyone had left, and Lily was asleep in her new room, Eleanor and Daniel sat in the courtyard, listening to the fountain and enjoying the peace of finally being where they belonged. "I was thinking," Daniel said, his arm around Elena's shoulders, "maybe in the spring, when the garden is in bloom, we could have a small ceremony here. Not a legal one. We can handle that at the courthouse again when the time is right. But something meaningful with Lily and our friends, vows that we choose for ourselves." "I'd like that," Eleanor replied, resting her head against his shoulder. "Something that celebrates the journey we've taken to find each other." "It's been quite a journey," Daniel reflected, "from Lily's impromptu proposal at the cafe to this moment." Elena smiled at the memory. She knew what she was doing, that daughter of mine. Even at 7, she recognized what we both needed before we did. "She's extraordinary," Daniel agreed, like her mother. As they sat together in the courtyard of the home they now shared, Eleanor marveled at the unexpected path that had brought them here. What had begun as a business arrangement, a marriage of convenience born from desperation, had transformed into something neither could have anticipated, a partnership of equals built on respect, understanding, and love that had grown naturally in its own time. Their story hadn't followed the traditional progression from dating to love to marriage. Instead, they had married as strangers, separated to find themselves, and only then discovered the love that had been growing beneath the surface all along. It wasn't the fairy tale that Elena had dreamed of as a young girl, but it was something better. A love story grounded in reality, choice, and the courage to build something authentic from unlikely beginnings. Under the Arizona stars, with the scent of desert flowers surrounding them, Elena turned to kiss the man who had first been her solution, then her friend, and finally her chosen partner. Their kiss held the promise not of happily ever after, but of something more precious. The commitment to choose each other day after day in freedom rather than obligation. And in the bedroom down the hall, Lily slept peacefully, secure in the knowledge that the family she had helped create was finally truly home.